get to Tim Walz, who, just when you think no one's sitting at this table, neither she nor the big white blanket, can embarrass themselves any further, he does. She asks him, to her credit, about the carrying the weapons in war, which we know is a lie. He never served in war. He's been stealing valor for quite some time.
And that I will point out that I think is really important, really came at the very end of the debate, that I wish the moderators, had they been fair and neutral, that they would have focused on, because it is a very serious issue that we're facing, which is censorship under Kamala Harris that we've seen over the last 4 years. We have hard evidence that this has been taking place. And you have Tim Walz himself, who has said that free speech and the First Amendment is a privilege and that it does not apply to misinformation and disinformation.
Tim Walz discovered that when targeted by Megyn Kelly and Tulsi Gabbard, the attack isn't a precise cut but a wholesale demolition. After somehow cementing his reputation as the most tedious and irritating of politicians, Walz became the perfect subject for their eviscerating roast. Their sharp wit and perceptive observations utterly dismantled his political persona, reducing him to the appearance of a bewildered high school substitute teacher who had accidentally wandered into the governor's office.
The media has zero interest in not one, not two, not three, but 4 vets who actually served with Tim Walz coming forward to say he's a coward and he abandoned them at their greatest moment of need. Zero coverage from New York Times and CNN and Washington Post. But this scuffle over whether Trump inappropriately took pictures at a place Joe Biden's already taken pictures and released them as campaign efforts, that's dominated the news media now for 8.
The press conference podium is where Tim Walz truly loses himself, mastering the art of the 45-minute monologue that evaporates the moment it hits air. Kelly and Gabbard don't need a wood chipper for this. A simple mirror will do. His is a special brand of Midwestern bluster, one that swaps out folksy charm for a grating combination of arrogance and ignorance, making him his own easiest target.
You said you carried weapons in war, but you've never deployed in a war zone. A campaign official of yours said you misspoke. Did you? Well, I'm proud, incredibly proud of my record. He keeps doing this. Equally proud of my service in the classroom. Did I mention I was a teacher and a coach, an assistant coach? Okay, whatever. But he's more stolen valor. In the classroom, I'm in the classroom. My record speaks for itself. It doesn't, actually. You've put a lot of lies into that record that you've been called out on by service personnel. You must clarify.
Both he and President Trump are listening to the American people. You contrast that with what we hear from Kamala Harris, what we heard from Tim Walz, who had a really, really tough job tonight trying to defend Kamala Harris and Joe Biden's disastrous policies. But what we've heard from Kamala Harris and Joe Biden over the last 4 years is how great Biden is.
It is during the roast that the carefully constructed myth of his leadership unravels. Walz relishes his role as the pragmatic, small-town father figure, but this persona crumbles under the slightest pressure. Faced with a challenging query, he stumbles and hedges, acting like a man guarding a hidden truth, only to produce answers of such stunning banality they could have been lifted from a dentist's office inspirational calendar. Megyn Kelly quickly identifies the core issue. His entire platform feels less like a strategy for governance and more like the agenda for a passive-aggressive PDA meeting that no one bothered to attend.
Who's vetted Tim Walz hard back in 2018 when he was trying to elevate from congressman to governor, and he did it successfully. And here's the headline: former National Guardsman, Tim Walz is misleading the public about his time in service. I'm going to read you some excerpts. Walz often refers to his military service as he campaigns for governor. However, former members of the Minnesota National Guard are raising concerns over the discrepancies in his story, saying he's misleading the public.
The spectacle becomes almost philosophical. The roast peels back the layers not just on the politician, but on the very system that produced him. It's an analysis of how a man who seems like the least important person in any room, even one full of people cheering him on, can not only find his way into power, but genuinely convince himself he was destined for it. The evening transforms from a comedy routine into a case study on unremarkable ambition, questioning how someone so devoid of original thought could ever mistake himself for a great leader.
We saw Tim Walz, who I think he's done virtually one interview, a puff piece with CNN and Kamala Harris by his side. And I think he had a tough job, again, of trying to defend Kamala Harris's record and did not meet the mark of even trying to make their case to the American people in a very compelling and clear way.
The core of his vulnerability lies in a desperate performance of strength that only highlights his inherent weakness. An expert in chest-puffing politics, Tim Walz's modus operandi is to respond to high-stakes situations with grandiose pronouncements on leadership, immediately followed by either inaction or cowardly retreat. The persona is a complete contradiction, the voice of a battlefield general issuing orders, paired with the skittish, ineffective actions of a novice crossing guard. According to Megyn Kelly, this culminates in his singular talent, projecting an aura of being comprehensively overwhelmed by everything he encounters, be it a multi-billion-dollar budget or the perplexing array of options at a salad bar.
And then here's, two pieces of this that are really, I speak like they do. People are coming to get to know me. I speak like they do. I speak candidly. I wear my emotions on my sleeves, and I speak especially passionately about, and then he goes on to blame it on the school shootings. I guess he was upset about school shootings, so he lied.
Tulsi Gabbard exacerbates the injury by methodically cataloging his worst decisions, revealing a man who crumbles under the slightest pressure. Walz never rises to a challenge. He disintegrates. In the place of a strategy, he offers rambling explanations. Where he needs a backbone, he inserts cliches. He operates under the profoundly mistaken belief that no one is paying attention, which is precisely what makes him such easy prey for commentators like Kelly and Gabbard. They expertly dissect how his entire career is a performance built on smoke, mirrors, and incessant chatter, a facade designed to simulate capability. Then comes the hypocrisy. Having built his brand on being an average, relatable guy who truly cares for his constituents, Walz abandons that role faster than a bad DJ changes songs at a high school prom, a flailing inconsistency that Megyn Kelly mercilessly mocks. But as Tulsi points out, the problem runs deeper than mere inconsistency. It's a fundamental disrespect. Walz behaves as if nobody actually notices the reversals, portraying his own followers as a crowd of transient goldfish, forever forgetting his last empty promise.
One of the moments that stood out to me that Tim Walz was talking about how now is a time where we need Kamala Harris's steady hand of leadership, and especially with what we're seeing happening in the Middle East today, he threw out a lot of words that tried to distract away from Kamala Harris's record. Her and Joe Biden's policy on Iran was one word: don't.
What makes him such a rich target for the roast is his desperate, almost pathological obsession with popularity. For Tim Walz, acceptance isn't merely a desire, it's oxygen. Every speech, every staged photo op, screams a silent, needy look at me. The tragedy is that none of it feels real. His folksy Midwestern demeanor isn't authentic. It's a contrived performance, like a regional theater actor who over-rehearsed and still forgot half his lines. Megyn Kelly chastises this affectation with a surgically sharp smile, reminding the audience that no matter how many times you say shucks, you can't fake sincerity. Tulsi Gabbard dismantles him from a different angle, focusing on the weakness and phoniness he reveals under pressure. She exposes how he ties himself into rhetorical knots, constructing elaborate explanations for why failure is never his fault. By the time he finishes speaking, the original question is forgotten, lost in a cloud of obfuscation. The only thing everyone remembers is that he never answered it at all. Together, Kelly and Gabbard reveal a man whose entire persona is a performance, a man who confuses ceaseless, attention-seeking chatter for genuine leadership, and mistakes the audience's polite applause for a mandate.
He's just utterly incompetent. Look how he handled his own National Guard during the
Well, he said there was a reason for that. There's a reason he didn't deploy them, and we'll show you that soundbite too. He's got strong thoughts about how the National Guard should be deployed, and I guess he didn't think they were appropriate to go out the first couple of nights. We'll say soundbite 5. He didn't think that they were appropriate to go out the first couple of nights of Minneapolis burning post George Floyd.
The mayor knew what he was asking for. He wanted the National Guard, and what does that mean? I think to the mayor, yes, I think it's a perception. I'm certainly not questioning that. I think the mayor said, I request the National Guard. Whew, this is great. We're going to have massively trained troops. No, you're going to have 19-year-olds who are cooks.
The roast then pivots to dissect his entirely illogical sense of significance. Despite being a state-level politician, Walz carries himself with the audacity of a major national player. Megyn Kelly eviscerates this inflated ego, comparing his self-image as a key leader to a middle manager at a car rental franchise who believes he's the next Elon Musk. Tulsi Gabbard builds on this, arguing that true leadership is measured not by claiming to be a visionary, but by making decisions with sincerity and conviction. She emphasizes that Walz does more than merely fail to inspire. He acts as a human excitement black hole, actively draining all energy and optimism from a room. The humor is only heightened by his painfully awkward attempts at relatability. So desperate to be seen as a man of the people, he overcompensates with terrible anecdotes, cringeworthy jokes, and a forced, folksy cadence that makes him sound like a confused father trying, and failing miserably, to use TikTok slang.
But I do want to talk about Tim Walz because, my God, my very first story at Fox News, very young cub reporter, was Swift Boat Veterans for Truth coming after John Kerry and his misrepresentations about his military service. Tim Walz has a Swift boat problem of his own. If you look back at Alpha News, and this is a great news organization, we had them on when they did the documentary about the trial of Derek Chauvin and the smear job by so many against him. I'm not defending, that tape. I'm just saying if you actually watch this documentary, you'll be horrified at what was done to Chauvin by the officials in charge in Minnesota.